So I made another trek to the movies. This one was for another one that was highly anticipated by me, with 28 years later, the continuation of one of my favorite movies that it scared the crap out of me as a kid. But for whatever reason, I was a junkie for those types of movies. So when it came to movies like 28 Days Later or even Dawn of the Dead, those running infected, or in one case zombies, but in the case of 28 Days Later, not necessarily zombies, they were more infected with the rage virus, which it just scared the crap out of me as a kid. So when I found out this movie was coming out, I had tickets reserved a while ago. Then I finally got to see it today, and I want to talk about it. So this movie, from what I've been seeing from people, has been highly divisive. There have been people that don't like it or do like it. And I'm going to talk about my pros, my cons, and my mix like I always do. I got my notes that I took during the movie. So let's just get into it. If you're unfamiliar, I'm sure you all know if you clicked on this video. I doubt anybody who hasn't seen any of the movies hasn't. But just to give you a little overview, 28 Days Later was the origin of the rage virus, which caused people to become infected and uncontrollably starts to attack people in order to infect the other people with the same virus. It was shot with this kind of gritty, like camera look that was very iconic at the time, and I think has made people very much like a cult film when it comes to this movie. I'm one of those people, but a very iconic movie in the zombie, I say that in quotes because they're not really zombies, genre. Next came 28 Weeks Later, which was more of a continuation of the aftermath of the rage virus and trying to reintegrate society into this. I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie. I didn't dislike it, but I thought it was a tonal shift away from what made the first movie so great. So it left a bad taste in my mouth, but I did find it entertaining nonetheless. But when 28 years later now is set from the 28-year mark after that rage virus, and how is society functioning at this time? And it centers on a group of people who are living on an island away from the UK or the British Islands, which has now been quarantined from the rest of the world. They were able to stop this infection there, but they've been cut off from the outside world. No one's coming to help them. No one's coming to save them, and you're not allowed to leave that island. So there's a society of people who have been left behind, and it shows in the movie. So let's get into, start with the pros, we'll go with the cons, we'll go with the mix, and then we'll wrap this up in a pretty little bow. First, we'll start with the pros. I really like the atmosphere of this film. Post-apocalyptic films for me have always been like a guilty pleasure, which I enjoyed just watching how society would function when the world goes to crap. And this film, because it's set 28 years later, they've been living with this virus as a part of this society cut off from the world, and it really shows in how they made this film. So this film is set 28 years later, but in canon, it's set in 2002 and then 28 years after that. So you can feel with the atmosphere, how they dress, and some of the other things that they have, that the world stopped at 2002. And I saw some like Easter eggs, being that I'm a millennial, of being like, man, I remember when the world looked like that. Remember this, remember that. I just found that to be really cool, and then showing how that society would now function. So I don't want to get into details of this, but how would these people begin to work if you're cut off from the world with no technology, and how these people would be able to have some sort of hierarchy or society in that. What would they do? And I thought they did a nice job of kind of that world building that you need in this post-apocalyptic type of atmosphere, especially when it's set much later. Usually you start seeing these types of things with The Descent, 5 years, maybe 10 years, but when you're set 30 years later, how much, because you have new generations of people in here, how do they function? How do they bring the younger people up into this new generation? And I thought that part was really cool. Next up, we have the expansion. You'll hear me say this in so many different reviews that I'll do, but I love lore, and the expansion of the lore with the rage virus is here. Again, no spoilers, but the infected have been around for 30 years at this point. So there has been some evolution with how they function. Not just that, but there's also different types of infected, a la The Last of Us. It felt like with that type of vibe, where there seems to be different types of infected and how they react and the different sounds that they make and how they move. And I love that type of stuff, so you can't give me enough of the lore. Funny enough, the infected themselves seem to have a little bit of a society going on, a little bit of a hierarchy going on, and that's really cool to see in this movie. Next up, we have the acting. I thought the film was well acted. This film, similar to The Sauce, what made 28 Days Later so great, focuses on the characters. It's character driven. It's not just like, okay, we have a bunch of people here, how are we going to survive? It's more about developing relationships between different people. And I thought the protagonist, when you have a child actor as your main character, it can make or break your film. And he did a really good job. It was very believable in the things that he acted. He didn't really seem like he was out of place. So hats off to him. His supporting cast and everybody else also is really good. Specifically, two people I want to give a shout out to, which is Aaron Taylor Johnson. He plays the father of the protagonist, and I thought he did a really good job of kind of conveying what he wanted from his son, in a sense of it was a bit of a relationship that a lot of people have with their fathers, kind of tough love, but also you could tell that he really loved his son and really wanted what was best for him. And just like when you have children at a certain age, you tend to have this tug of war between yourself that, do you want to be the tough dad to make sure that he's ready for the world that's out there, or do you want to be the dad that's just gonna love your son and kind of coddle? And you could feel him kind of tearing at that. He conveyed that really well. I think he was torn in certain parts where you could really tell, do I have to be a dad here where I'm gonna pick him up and say it's okay, or am I gonna yell at him and say, are you doing the wrong thing here? Really well job by him. And then of course you have my man Ralph Fiennes. I'm a huge fan of The Menu. It was one of my favorite movies when it came out that year, and I thought he just did a great job as the head chef in that movie, where he was kind of like quirky and kind of a jerk. This is a complete tonal shift from that, of course, but he really just nails these types of character roles where he plays kind of an eccentric person and you can feel his eccentricities, but he also knows how to dial up the weirdness and then bring it back when you need to get a little more serious. And he's always super believable when you're like, man, this guy's out of his mind, but at the same time, you can really be like, this guy's actually really a kind person. He wants what's best. He did it well in The Menu, and he does it well here. So I can't say that enough about him. Next up, we have the kills, the gore, the things that people watch this movie for. There are some things in this that I'm not gonna lie. I was like, man, it's like Mortal Kombat out here right now. Some of the stuff that they were doing. So if you're a fan of that type of stuff, it's not throughout the entire movie, but there are bits and pieces throughout where you'll see it and you're like, there was some gasps in the audience. It was a pretty full crowd here. So it was some gasp in the audience. And I'm with popcorn. I'm like, man, this is dope. So really nice with the kills. You got to have that in these types of films, but it's not to the point that it's like all they're doing where they're just trying to sell that. Like, I like Terrifier, but Terrifier is more trying to sell that than anything. They've made a shift from that. I'm getting off topic, but I like the kills in this movie. Let's move on before I start yapping about something else. And finally, we have the direction, the tonal shift back to its roots. I kind of alluded to that in the very beginning, how the sauce of 28 Days Later to me was about the characters. In my opinion, the real antagonists of the first one were other people. It actually wasn't the infected, and I think that character part of it really drove home that movie. This movie is not that, but at the same time, it's very specifically character driven about relationships between different types of family members and the lengths that they will go for those people. Now, I think in these types of post-apocalyptic types of movies, you really need to make that the main part of the movie. It shouldn't be about some sort of like big entity, and it has to be more about those character things. And most movies that do well with this do that. And I think they did that enough in this film for me to say that it was a good directional tonal shift. They went back to its roots. I think 28 Weeks Later had more of that, but it was a little too much ensemble in my opinion. But of course, no movie is perfect, and we have to go to the cons. So the first con for me is the runtime and the pacing. I thought this movie is a little under 2 hours, but it felt very slow at times. When these days, movies seem to be really long, and anything over 2 hours seems to have this problem. But even though it was under 2 hours, in my opinion, there was a lot of lulls in this film where I was kind of like, I'm not quite sure what we're doing or why we're taking so long to advance the plot, but the pacing to me just seemed a little slow. And by the end of the movie, I felt like the movie could have been like a lot shorter and still gotten across the same thing without having to do so much. So it just felt like a lot of filler. And also to compound off that, because it is going to be a trilogy, the other film that is coming out after this was already filmed back to back. They shot it back to back. So we already know that it's coming out. It's going to be called The Bone Temple. And it felt very much like this was like a world building type of introduction to this trilogy more than an actual standalone film. I have issues with that. These days, they're building a lot of trilogies, and they tend to make these incomplete type of stories because of that, and this very much follows in that same tone. The movie presents a ton of questions that never actually get answered, and I find myself just being like, well, why are they doing this a lot, where I know they didn't really give an answer to any of them. I would say there's about 5 or 6 things that I was just like, okay, well, I see that, but why are they doing this? And I understand that we're going to find out, but it almost feels like because of that, similar to watching a TV show like The Walking Dead, it just feels like I watched season 1, and I know I just watched an incomplete film where I'm kind of tantalized by some of the things that they did, but I feel like anytime you make a trilogy, it still should wrap up something, and I don't feel like it wrapped anything up. It just said, okay, here's here's what we have, and then we're going to go on and just continue this story in the next movie. I can really feel like with people that don't like this movie, they really won't like that part. Like, again, I'm giving you cons, but I'm willing to overlook that for the sake of, I know there's another movie coming, and it feels like it's a piece to a whole, though, which I'm just, again, that just to me shouldn't be what a film is when you make anything, even if it's a part of a trilogy. And then finally, without getting into any plot spoilers or anything, I feel like the way that they built this film, even though it is actually the third film in this universe, I feel like 28 Weeks Later was kind of retconned out of it. If you watch the ending to 28 Weeks Later, it kind of said either A, that didn't happen, or it leaves a big question unanswered in how we got to this point. But that film feels like you could throw the entire film out and you wouldn't need it. Nothing that they made in 28 Weeks Later, in my opinion, was really necessary. There are major plot points in that film which they don't address at all, and I just don't know, either they tried to retcon it or they're just saying just forget about it, but there's nothing to me that alludes to anything from that film. So it's just, if you need to go into this film watching anything, you don't really have to watch anything. You can watch 28 Days Later just to kind of get what you're dealing with, but you definitely don't need to watch 28 Weeks Later, in my opinion. I don't know why they did that, but again, it's not the end of the world as far as like the film goes. I just feel like they should have like threw something in there. And finally, the things that I'm like a little wishy-washy, a little mixed on, and the first one for me is the film style. This film is very now being touted because it's filmed almost entirely with iPhones, and you might have seen the pictures they have coming around of how they did this filming process. Yes, it was filmed with iPhones, but it wasn't like somebody just holding a phone like this. It was a rigged out thing with iPhones on it. I'm sure they used like Blackmagic Cam or like Final Cut Cam to kind of like hone in some of the things that they were doing, but they were filmed on rigs with a bunch of different angles, and it wasn't just like a straight up iPhone, but it was filmed like the glass that they were using, there was no big cinema lenses. It was an iPhone, and it really showed in the film. I liked it at times. I liked that gritty thing that they were trying to get back from 28 Days Later, but there were other times with some of like the animations and things that they did that it kind of got annoying, and I was like, why are they adding this in here? That's just an opinion thing again, but it was like, I don't know how to say, it's kind of cheesy in certain times. So that's why I have it in mixed. While I do enjoy it at certain times, but I do think there were some things that held it back with the iPhone, in my opinion, especially because some of this stuff, like the scale of it is not like in the first movie where most of it's filmed in like little rooms and things that you're confined in certain spaces. This one's filmed in larger spaces where you can see some of the limitations of an iPhone and some of the things that they were trying to convey. The shaky cam thing and some of the other angles they were trying to have, sometimes it made me a little dizzy. The first film did as well, but you know, it's kind of different in 2025, I guess. So again, I don't mind it, but sometimes I wish they didn't do it. I'm trying not to laugh because the next one on my list, it's getting memed to hell. I see it all over TikTok now, and you'll get it if you see it, but there's a lot of gratuitous meat in sorry. But there's a lot of gratuitous meat in this movie. Look, I don't care about like nudity in films. It's not one of those things that I see and I'm just like, oh, close your eyes, like I'm an adult. But there are times where it's like egregiously, like you're panning down to certain stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know how else to say this other than, if there's a lot of swinging meat in this film. There's a lot of swinging meat, and there's no other way around that other than the fact that, like, I don't really think it was necessary. I get in the world that maybe these people don't have clothes, but next up is one of those things that I can't complain about this, but I'm mixed about it. And it's similar to watching a horror film when someone runs up the stairs instead of out the front door, and you're like, what the hell are you doing? There are a couple of face-palming things in my opinion, in this film where I'm just like, what the hell are you doing? But I understand, for the sake of character writing and character development, that's the director's and the writer's discretion on what they're doing. It's just sometimes for me with those types of films, it's tough to watch. Not all, but there are some choices where I'm just like, come on, you know, and I'm not complaining, but that's why I have it in mixed. Just some of those choices are just, there's no way that somebody would, I guess there is some way, but I don't know, I wouldn't do it. And I didn't want to be that guy yelling at the screen, so I just kept eating my popcorn. But there are some character choices. Again, I'm trying not to, if I go any into detail, it'd be giving away plot points, and I don't want to do that. And finally, my last thing I mixed on, I was torn about putting this, whether I wanted to put it in the cons or in the mix, but I decided on mixed was the ending. It's weird. And it leaves you on a cliff, and it's weird. And when you try to process it, you can see why the ending was that. It's so hard not to give this any without any plot points. You have to watch the movie. Again, please don't ruin it for anybody in the comment section. But there's just, like, I get why it was that. But at the same time, I was like, the tonal shift was just like, the hell am I watching? And that's how I felt towards the end of the movie. Again, it didn't take away from my overall enjoyment of the film, but it was a little weird. I just hope they don't make that what the second film is. Like, don't make that the whole tone of the movie, or I'm going to lose my mind. But let's wrap this up. I'm going to talk about what I think the world is going to say about this, and then myself. Like I said in the beginning, I can see why this film is so divided with people. I've seen spoiler-free people saying things like they loved it, and I've seen people saying that they were absolutely disappointed. And then people that more gravitate towards what I am, which is a person who likes a little bit more nuance. I like the movie. It is disappointing in certain things, but I still enjoyed it. It's just, I think personally, I put it up on such a pedestal because I thought 28 Weeks Later was so well done that it doesn't match that, but it does come close in certain things, and I need to see the rest of them. The first one was a complete film, which I didn't need anything else, even though I would have liked it to continue. I didn't need anything else, and this one doesn't feel that way. So if people walk in there expecting 28 Weeks Later, they're going to be massively disappointed. It's one of those things where you're a victim of your own success in the past, in my opinion. So I liked it, but I didn't love it. Overall, in my opinion, I would give this a C+. It is a good film. It is an enjoyable film. It's not one of those pop it in and watch all the time films, but it's definitely one that I want to watch at least one or two more times. If you're a fan of the series, I do think it'd be cool to watch in its scale, but I don't think it's necessary. You can wait for it on streaming platforms. I don't think you're going to miss anything from the movie experience versus watching it on your flat screen, but I do think that you should watch it. Just understand some of the things that I said, and you'll be fine. Again, without going into sort of like the complaining category of things, I just think in this age in 2025, with the popularity of reviews of any short, like I do food reviews on my main channel and even on this channel, people don't like when people have nuance to things. They like, you either love something or you don't like something. You can't be in between or you're sitting on the fence. Well, I live on the damn fence because I am a person who likes nuance. I like details. I like to know the why. Doesn't mean you have to think everything is okay. It means that most things aren't perfect and most things aren't a complete pile of trash. There's usually a sliding scale in between there where most things belong. And in my opinion, in a letter grade, this is a C+. I could even give it a soft B- because it is enjoyable. But I just wanted to say that because I know with any review I've done with movies or anything like that, people will always, like, if they disagree with me, they're going to come in and be like, oh, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Listen, opinions are opinions. I'm not saying you're stupid if you hated it. I'm not saying you're stupid if you like it. There's perfectly good reasons on both ends of that spectrum. So I just wanted to talk about it and talk about this movie. If you did see it, let me know what you think. But please keep the spoilers out of here because people haven't seen it yet. It's only come out a couple of days ago. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed.